Well, earlier we had something from a brewery out in Michigan called Tapestry. That was an IPA, a double IPA called Bring the Ruckus.
Okay.
They're actually in Bridgeham, I believe, Michigan. And then now, just to kind of keep the ABV, or alcohol by volume, that's a term that we'll start using.
Gotcha.
That's prevalent. Like when you go out, you'll see that either in your beer menu or on the chalkboard. That's going to tell you what your alcohol content is on that beer. And Wood told me he wanted to keep the party going, basically.
Right.
So the next highest thing in the fridge I had was Sierra Nevada Torpedo. So that's what we're drinking right now. That comes in right at 7.2. Bring the Ruckus, I believe, is 9.4.
Oh.
So we took a little step down. But, for people who may be curious or are novices in the craft beer world, there are a lot of places at your disposal to go and kind of get your feet wet. Because I don't think that it's best. The worst thing you can do is be somebody that drinks Bud Light, Miller Lite, or doesn't drink beer regularly, and then have somebody hand you an IPA or something that's going to be very abrasive to your taste buds and turn you off from the whole thing altogether.
Well said. Well said.
Most places will either let you sample or get what we call a flight, which is 4 or 5, generally 4-ounce pours. That'll range you somewhere between $5 and $7, mostly.
That's for the entire flight?
Right.
Okay.
And that is a good way to kind of get a few different styles of beer so you can see if that's something that you may really want to start to try to experience, or if that's something that you need to knock off the list, like I'll never be an IPA fan or I'll never be a stout fan, because they are very different. Pilsners and lagers are what most of your domestic beer scene is. That's your Miller Lite, your Budweiser. Budweiser's a lager. Miller Lite is a Pilsner. And the difference between those two is basically how they are created. Lagers are cold fermented, which basically means while that beer is maturing, it's kept at a certain temperature in a regulated cooler, cold room. And most of those domestic ones are surprisingly made with rice as opposed to malt or barley, which is what you get in your craft beer. So if you're somebody that stays in that wheelhouse, the easiest transition beer style for you is going to... There are craft beer pilsners. I myself don't love them, but they're easy drinking. But you'll want to drink an amber ale or possibly a wit beer. An amber ale is basically, as the name describes or would suggest, a beer that is amber in hue. There's not a lot of hop content in it. The malt character or profile is very tame. There's nothing bitter in those beers. They'll actually have a bit of a sweet flavor to them. And a wit beer is basically a blue moon.
Okay.
And so that's a wheat profile, high malt build, but still has citrus, orange, lemon, lime. So you'll get a lot of that in your aftertaste. A good standard for a wit beer is Bell's Oberon.
I'm a big fan of that one.
That's starting to come to the end of that season for that beer. But those are easy on the taste buds. There's no bite, no bitter, nothing like that that would push you away from craft beer.
Now let me ask you, because somebody put me on to it, to craft beers and IPAs and the different choices. On my own, my beer journey had made its way to wheat beers, Whitmer Brothers. I think Goose Island had one that I liked, and then I'm not sure if Warsteiner was actually a wheat beer, but that was kind of like where I had peaked out in my beer journey. if so to speak. But then I was talking to a coworker, and he started throwing around the term IPA. And historically, I guess beer had to make its way. Look at me going out on a limb here. But beer had to make its way to India from Great Britain.
India Pale Ale. That's what IPA stands for.
Right. And so they had to do something extra to it to make it to allow it to arrive. And the colonization that was going on, I didn't even Google none of this stuff, beforehand.
No, that's the story.
But it had to get to India and still be consumable. So, moving forward to today, I just wanted to ask you, how did you get to the next step from your Miller Lights, Michelob Ultra, and what so on and so forth?
So to finish your IPA story. What they ended up doing to transport that beer is they raised the alcohol content. They raised the ABV and put a lot more hops and barley and grain in it to help hold the content of the liquor. So it didn't sour as it transported. Rule of thumb for all your IPAs, they're going to be bitter. They're going to have a high IBU content, international bitterness units. The general scale from that is 0 to 100, but that's just the base. You can do whatever you want. McKellar, this guy out of Denmark, who's kind of a traveling brewer, he's got an IPA out that's got 1,000 IBUs in it. So you can do whatever you want, but generally you'll see that range 0 to 100.
Okay.
The closer to 100, the more bitter. But for me personally, I started out on what I call college beer.
Okay.
And I hated it. I hated it. It turned me into a liquor person, honestly. And then I had a buddy introduce me to Sam Adams Boston Lager. And that was kind of my gateway beer. Okay. It had a lot more flavor. There's a lot more body in that beer, or when I say body, that's literally the weight of the beer, how thick it is in comparison to your standard domestic beers. And from there, it was like, to me, there was this culture shock of, so there's not just this yellow foamy stuff. There's all this other variant of beer and flavor.
And character.
So, I also think that stouts are a beer that people are afraid of. There's a lot of beer racism, honestly. Like people judge dark beers harshly. And
that's a common thing.
Yeah,
darker things seem to have a harder time in the world.
It's a true story, man. And the reality of it is, a lot of those beers have considerably lower IBU rates, and most of them have some tone of coffee, chocolate, toffee, molasses. Stouts have they're a very thick beer, which also scares people. But craft beer is not meant to be chugged. It is not meant to be.
That's
bombed.
What I like about it, actually.
It's meant to give you an experience. And so if you're somebody, I'll give a story as to what brought me into stouts.
Okay.
Initially I did not like coffee.
Okay.
But I used to. But I am not a morning person. And so I was working for a cable company, and I had to get up very, very early. And they made fun of me, like, do you want any coffee with your cream and sugar? Because that's the only way I could get it down. Like, I had to load up.
Right.
And our now brewmaster, my buddy Jared, he's like, so what you need to do is split your coffee with hot chocolate, 50-50.
Okay.
And that'll give you some sweetness, take that bitter taste off that people don't like about coffee. And slowly but surely, I weaned myself to about a 20% hot chocolate, 80% coffee ratio, till I just went to black coffee.
Okay.
I love coffee now.
Okay.
And I drink it black.
Good man.
Drink it black. Stouts are very much like that.
Right.
And so if you like coffee, if you like chocolate, if you're somebody that puts creamer in your coffee, you will love a good chocolate stout. Don't be afraid of it. Go out there and try that.
Is there an oatmeal stout?
Oatmeal stouts are very prevalent. Those tend to be a little more sweet. The oatmeal in that is mostly used for what we call mouthfeel, what you actually get in your texture. Oatmeal gives beers almost a velvety or silky texture.
Okay.
And it also helps nullify some of the harshness that you may get with some of the malts or barley that's used in a darker beer.
All right. And just looking at our time here, I think I'm going to split this episode into a part 1 and a part 2 to make it more accessible, or convenient for anybody to happen to press play. Before we get off of the beer portion, I'm just kind of dumbfounded, and maybe I have technological advances here as a note. What's happened in the last few years that's just allowed this explosion in the beer community? Like I said, I've been messing with some IPAs for about the last year and a half, and now to go into a store just to see all of the different brands, it's overwhelming. And this location that I went into yesterday, I just was taken aback by how many different companies there are. Every time I go out, if I'm gonna check a pay-per-view out at a sports bar, wing joint, bar and grill, I'm just blown away by the sheer number of companies that are in this market. Oh, and I know what I want to say. I hate to backtrack, but I just wanted to throw this in to hit on your stout story. You know why I started messing with beers above the Bud Light, Miller Lite, Miller? Obviously Corona and Heineken were some gateways for me.
Yeah. But
you know what had me checking for or advancing my beer journey? You like, what the hell? No I just met you, brother. Rakim. He used to reference Guinness Stout in his lyrics.
That's true.
All the time.
I'm a big Raw fan.
And I was like, man, when I go into a liquor store and see Guinness Stout on the shelf, I'm going to get me some Guinness Stout. And the first time that I was able to get me a Guinness Stout, to your point, to confirm that, I was very shook by what I was taking in, because I guess I just wasn't mature enough yet for that. But it was Rakim, man, that very early on said, hey, brother, there's something greater out there than this old you're drinking.
Yeah, and Guinness is actually, to me, a very scary gateway beer.
Okay.
Guinness is it's an Irish stout, so it is meant. Guinness is always on nitro. It's always on nitrous oxygen. So if you ever pay attention, there's always a black spigot or a longer silver attachment on those taps. It's because they want that beer to oxidize itself as it comes out very slowly, so that you get that creamy head that they often put a clover in. It's a lot. Irish stouts are very thick and creamy in content, and so I think it can push people away. Now, it is a very mild flavor in a Guinness, but it looks like it's going to be more bitter or strong than they are. Right.
All right, so I don't know who's here for hoops and who's here for hops, but I'm going to move the conversation a little bit along a little bit. Like I said, I'm going to go ahead and make this into a part 1 and part 2. Hey, I don't know about you, but I was just very interested in learning some more about beer and for what we're doing in the future.
And to answer your other part to that, why are there so many options now?
Oh, yeah.
Some of that is just the craft beer boom, the fact that there's a large portion of, I don't have the numbers for it, but my buddy Jared would be able to give these off the top of his head.
Okay.
But the craft beer industry is a large percent of financial growth in the U.S. over the past 10 years. There's a large uptick and not